Hey YouTube, thanks for tuning in. This is a very special video. I received the new tiny Flysky FS-MG7 radio a few days ago. I'm super interested in all new radios, and of course I've ordered it, and I can tell you this radio is a bummer, a real bummer. It leaves me kind of speechless. But first, let's start with this. I paid for this radio about the same price as I paid for two of the new Genius Dumbo RC X6 PM 350 radios. So twice the price for this radio. But that's not the main problem. This radio is that complicated, unbelievable. It took me some days playing around to understand all the functions or most of the functions, and in this video I will try to explain and show all of the functions to you, at least most. But if you are not interested in me explaining and talking forever all the functions, then simply jump to the end of this video and watch my final thoughts, where I will compare it to many other radios in about the same category, and you will hear what I think plus, view and minus of this radio, and if I would recommend to buy this radio. I can already tell you no. Let's start with what you get. The FS-MG7 comes in a nice box, nicely packed, no problem. And you get the radio, a 7-channel receiver including light controller, the FS-R7D. You get 2 grub screws to adjust the strength of the steering wheel, what you can do, and you get a tiny manual. But this manual in Chinese and in English will not help you if you wanna use more than the basic functions, and you can download the complete long manual as PDF on Flysky website, and I highly recommend to download and read the manual if you wanna work with this radio, and it's unbelievably complicated. Here's only an example. I will show you the manual in detail a little bit later. For example, what this simple LED can show. Check this out. It's absolutely crazy. The radio itself is nice. It has a foam wheel, the small form factor, and 6 buttons here, 3 switches, and a 3-position switch here. For channel 5, 6 and 7, 2 push buttons, and on the left side it has a USB-C port. It seems to be the exact same radio as does come with the FMS, FCX24 and Basher and K5 trucks and the new Hobby Plus CR18P trucks, but it's not exactly the same form. I do only have the first version with those toggles here of the FCX24 radio, so not the later ones, the V2, which doesn't have all those wheels and toggles here anymore, but looks more as this radio. And the Hobby Plus radio is exactly the same as the FMS radio of the first FCX24 and Bashers, but it's not exactly the same as the new FS-MG7. Check it out here. Here's a difference, even not in the housing, and here's a difference. And the FS-MG7 does come with a foam wheel, while the FCX24 and CR18P radios do come with only plastic wheels. Since the FS-MG7 is an ANT protocol radio, you may ask yourself, many of you will ask this initially, will this radio bind to the FCX24? No, it does not, at least not to the V1 version with the radio I showed you already. I do only have FCX24s and radios with this version, and I do not have the new V2 version radio that does come now. And it also does not bind with the Hobby Plus, CR18P, Trailhunter and Rockwan radios. And no, it also does not bind with the V2 electronics of the SCX24, which is ANT protocol. However, the FS-MG7 does bind with the other Flysky ANT protocol receivers. I have the tiny, love it, FSR4M 4-channel receiver. It binds to this radio, and also the 4-channel receivers, the really Chain 4 receivers, which are the FS whatever 4 of Flysky. They are sold as really here. So the MG7 will bind to those receivers. I will show this to you later. To the radio, it does have LEDs here. You can switch on and even change color, and 2 LEDs here on this and on that position. It has channel 1, channel 2. It has a 2-position switch for channel 3, channel 4. Yes, it's always confirmed by nice sounds which you cannot switch off. And it has a 3-position switch, unfortunately, on channel 5, and a push button on channel 6, and a push button on channel 7. This is only used for 4-wheel steering. It has a super nice 4-wheel steering mode, unfortunately on channel 7. And if you use a 2-in-1 receiver ESC unit from Flysky, this will also not work. Then it's for adjusting the drag brake, and you will lose this super nice, best of the whole radio, I think, 4-wheel steering function. USB-C port is for updates, for firmware updates. If you plug in a USB-C cable, then the radio is always on. You can't switch it off anymore, so I think it's not for powering the radio. And of course it takes 4 AAA batteries as the other tiny radios. The receiver does have 7 channels and a light controller, the FSR7D. My radio did not come with a manual for the receiver, but you will find the instructions in the large manual if you download it on FlySky.cn.com. And now let's first take a quick look to the super long and super complicated manual, and then I will show and explain all functions of this radio to you, what's super complicated. Here you can see a table of content of this long video. So if you're interested only in a special part, you can jump directly to the chapter you're interested in. You will find the timestamps in the description and don't have to search the whole video. Here's now the FS-MG7 manual you can download from Flysky website. There's a lot of content. You can see it here. The LED status of the receiver, super complicated. Operation guide, LED status of transmitter, binding, one-way and two-way switching. That's also important. I will show this to you. Stick calibration, ambient light, and the description of the channels. Channel switching. This is something that's super complicated and I didn't understand initially. Unfortunately, you cannot change the position of the channels on the radio. For example, change the channel 7 function, 4-wheel steering, to the button of channel 3 or 4. channel reverse, trim settings, dual rate settings. That's all not that easy. You have to use some special moves and press buttons, switch on. So super complicated. And switching model. This radio does have 5 model memories and it does work. And then we have the 2-in-1 mode. What's a further mode compared to one-way and two-way mode? 2-in-1 mode is for 2-in-1 receiver ESC units. Flysky has 2 ANT receivers with ESC. You can see them here, and maybe, I do not know because I don't have a new version of the FCX24 or the K5 Blazer from FMS. Maybe it will also work and bind with those receiver ESC light units, but I can't confirm this. Yes, there's also a beginner mode. You can reduce maximum throttle speed to 50%, failsafe settings, and a very important point, reset data. So if you are programmed and are lost and you do not know your settings anymore, and I had to do this quite often, then reset data to factory settings. Idle alarm and sleep mode, and transmitter voltage alarm and receiver voltage alarm, but receiver always gets its power from the BSC normally. And here all the instructions again. We are still in the table of content, and here an overview. That's quite nice. And check those 2 LEDs, D1 and D2, and a ton of different ways D1 LED can be lit up and shows us some signs what it does now or what it's set to. And the logo sticker with ambient light. Yes, you can change from blue to green to red to white, and even if you on throttle the color will change. Who needs this? I do not know. Bind button and reverse button, super important, are used for many functions. And here side, not a lot to see here, and the left side, and also the receiver is explained quite well here with an overview, the LED status, and a bit of description. Getting started, not important, that's easy, everyone can do this, power on. But here the D1 LED, check this out, how many functions this does have or what it all can show. That's unbelievable. Those are 20, 30 different ways to be lit up. Unbelievable. And then some special notes. If it's only in 2-in-1 mode, beginner mode, it's super complicated, really. Wow. And here the D2 LED, not so many functions. Receiver voltage, low in normal receiver, and in 2-in-1 receivers I don't have one. In low, medium, high, ultra low. So this D2 LED is not that important. Then binding, I will show you binding, one-way and two-way switching. That's interesting, not that easy to understand what's the difference, but I will show it to you, of course. Stick calibration, if it works, also not that easy. The ambient light, yeah, you can switch, unimportant at all. And the system functions. And here we have channel 7, and that's a pity. It's super nice four-wheel steering. I will show it to you. But if you use a 2-in-1 unit, so with ESC then it switches the trade break and you will lose it. And if you use a receiver with only 4 channels, you will not be able to use this super nice function. I cannot understand why they didn't set it to channel 3 or 4. What a bummer. I will show it to you later. Channel reverse, trim setting, dual rate settings. That's all not easy. You can, if you use the normal mode, you can change all those settings in all channels. If you use the 2-in-1 or AU 2-in-1 unit, you can only change those settings in channels 1 to 4. And here, switching model, I will show it to you. Complicated, but it is to understand. 5 model memories. The 2-in-1 mode is explained, but unfortunately I don't have such a receiver. Beginner mode 50% maximum throttle. Failsafe settings I will show to you. And very important, reset data and the alarm functions. Sleep mode. Alarms for radio and receiver. Factory reset. You have reset data and factory reset. Factory default state. So, and here hold and bind channel 7 buttons on the transmitter and power it on. Data are reset and factory reset. Hold reverse and channel 7 buttons and data are reset. So here it seems the model is only reset and using the bind button in channel 7 and factory reset using reverse in channel 7 button, factory default state. So that's the difference. Receiver explanations, light functions, that's easy, I will show it to you. Firmware updates. So you can update the radio if there should be a new firmware. This would be super nice. Failsafe, okay. Here are the explanation how to change the strength of the steering wheel. I'm fine with the steering wheel settings now. Wow, 10 steps. And finally the specifications. 150 meters ground distance, resolution of 4096 watts, 12-bit, isn't it? Yes. And the receiver specifications, you can power it directly with the 2S LiPo or you can use a high voltage PSC. Of course, every modern receiver does this. And the receiver even has a distance up to 300 meters with a better, different radio. And that's it for the super complicated and very long manual. The manual is really not easy to understand. Maybe it's my English or it's their English. And their way of explanation was super puzzling, and I really had to read some parts several times and test to figure out how all this stuff works. So let's start. It was hard for me to decide with what to start because there are so many functions depending from other functions and binding and whatever and different modes. But I decided to start in normal standard mode. As you receive your Flysky radio, the receiver should already be bound and the radio should work normally with channel 1 to 7. So now I connect it to the receiver, servo channel 1, of course throttle channel 2, servo channel 3, servo channel 4. I connected a small winch to channel 5. If you use an ESC with BSC, don't forget to remove the red wire. And I connected a servo to channel 6 and 7, and we will check those functions now. Then I will show you all the light functions, what is not super difficult, and then we go on with the different modes and binding and so on. If you switch on your radio, it will blink. First we'll show you the mode you are in, and then blink red if there is no connection to a receiver. If you switch it on, then you see green and red, what they call orange, in the D1 LED, what means that the batteries in the radio are on medium full. So they would be green, orange, but it's green and red. And the other LED, the D2 green, this means the voltage in the receiver is perfect, but voltage comes from the BSC, so it will always be perfect, and it would flash red if it wouldn't be sufficient anymore. And then we have, I show you the most useless function first, how to change those ambient lights here. That's channel 7. You have to press for about 2 seconds and then it will be lit up. Now it's in blue without any change, and all the time you press channel 7 for 2 seconds, this should change. You see now it's blinking, and there's also a red, white, green blinking mode. Super cool. And there is also some mode where it changes color. If you, yes, here now you are in the mode, it changes color from blue to white and to red if you you push or pull the throttle trigger. So super useful, not in my opinion. And green, I want to get to the mode without anything, that's okay. And then we have the basic functions, of course, channel 1, channel 2, we have the throttle. Channel 3 is this switch here, always with a sound what's quite annoying. 1 beep, 2 beeps. That's channel 3 and that's channel 4. And now check this. 2 beeps. 1 beep. 2 beeps. I had problems with channel 4. Now this seems to be okay. Tried 4 or 5. Oh, can you hear it? Check it. There are some problems, and that's not because of the servo. I tried 4 or 5 different servos and not. Can you see it? There's a shivering, and not because of the receiver. I tried all 3 receivers, I will show you now, and the problem is evident always. If channel 4 is up, the servo does show this kind of shivering. In this position not, in this position yes. That's super annoying, and this is a problem of at least my radio. 4 or 5 servos, 3 different receivers, it's the radio. Then we have channel 5, where you can 3 position switch, nicely connect your winch. Oh, this is already broken now. 1 direction, 2 direction. This works nicely, but again with annoying sounds. And then we have channel 6. What is this channel? It's a momentary switch. As long as you stay, it will stay in the 2nd position. again with a noise I don't like. And channel 7, check this now. Only channel 1 steering servo does move. I press channel 7 once, 2 beeps, and now channel 7 servo does move too. Different direction. Now we are in 4-wheel steering mode. I press it once again. Now they move to the same direction. That's grab mode. And one more. 4 beeps or 3 beeps, always those beeps. And only the rear servo will work. And once more, only front wheel drive, 4-wheel, 3 beeps, grab, 4 beeps, rear wheel, 1 beep, front. This is super, super, super nice. Really, I like this. That's one of the few things I like in this radio. However, the problem is it's on channel 7 and you will lose this function if you use a 2-in-1 ESC receiver unit. And of course, you cannot use this function if you use a 4-channel receiver only. And it would be super nice to use those tiny receivers and make 4-wheel steering if you could switch the function of channel 7 to channel 4 or whatever, but this seems not to be possible. And then I will show you the basic function of beginner mode. Check the motor now, I hope you can hear it. Noisy. I switch it off. I also switch off the radio. And then I push the channel 6 button and turn the steering wheel to maximum counterclockwise. And now we are in beginner mode. We should be in beginner mode. I switch it on again. And I hope you can hear the difference. 50% maximum throttle. And to go back to normal mode, switch off, counterclockwise, and press channel 6, same times, hold those, switch on. And now we should be in normal mode again. And yes, I hope you can hear it. Much higher pitched noise, so much faster. And now to the light functions. You can connect 6 different LED types to the receiver. This is clearly labeled and not difficult. And if you switch on radio and receiver, all lights will be lit up shortly. And you do have a normal blinking mode, turning lights to the right and to the left. Unfortunately, you cannot switch off those. So that's annoying, as in most of those light controllers. And there are no hazard lights. And you have no rear light now. You have a brake light. So you can see, if I go, I'm now in forward reverse mode, then reverse, then I have the brake lights on. But the reverse light, you have to be in 0 position to get they call it backup light or reverse light. So if you switch your ESC to forward brake reverse mode, what you can do with those cheapos, then you have, because you always have to go to 0 position of throttle, your reverse light. If you go in forward reverse or crawler mode, you have to be, if you stay on reverse, you have the brake lights, and you have to go to center position to 0 to switch on the reverse light. What's not really nice is there is no backlight here or no red light, reverse light here. The braking lights only are lit up during braking, but they do not have a bit of a glimmer, some weaker light if they are not on. So that's not nice at all, I have to say. And then you have two more functions. Of course, you have normal front beams. Therefore, you have to turn the steering wheel 3 times front position. You have to do it slow. Now they are lit. And now they are off. Okay, I was too slow in the third time. You have to be much slower than in the new Dumbo RC radios. And then you have a flashlight, and therefore I connected a tiny LED to this channel of the light controller. Where is it? Here it is. And that's something I cannot understand why they did it. Because you have to turn the steering wheel counterclockwise 3 times, and then you have this blinking mode. But for what that is, nobody knows. And 3 times again. And they are off. It would have been so much nicer if this would be simply a second light switch and you could, for example, use it for a fog light. So then you have the 3 times front main beams and 3 times you have the fog lights for front. Would be super cool. I don't know who will need this or to use it for a light bar or whatever. Nobody knows why they make this blinking mode. So the light controller is more or less okay, but not really super good. You have always your turning lights on if you're going in circles. You do not have hazard lights. You don't have a red backlight, normal. So those lights you use for brake lights will not be lit up if you are not braking, and that's quite annoying. So quite a poor light controller. And if they would have made this second switch for the blinking light simply a normal light switch, this would be super cool because it could be used for fog lights, light bar, whatever. So the light controller is, I would say, poor. Come on. Could be so much better. And now quickly to reset data, what is model reset and factory reset, because I used this quite often and want to explain this before I change everything in the radio. And check this now. Turn the steering wheel to the right clockwise, and the arm of the steering servo is going counterclockwise. I change direction now. What is easy, I will show it to you later. And now clockwise. So that's what I changed in this model. The steering wheel or the steering servo is now going clockwise, and model reset should be counterclockwise. And now I make this model reset, what will only reset all the basic functions of the model, but binding will stay and failsafe will stay. And therefore you have to press channel 7 and the bind button and then switch on the radio noise. And now only the model should be reset again. So the receiver should still bind. And now, yeah. So the steering servo is now in the initial position or turns the initial way counterclockwise. And in contrary to model reset or reset data, factory reset will reset all settings. and therefore you have to press the reverse button and the channel 7 button and switch on the radio. 2 times noise, and now that's factory reset and the receiver should not bind anymore. And you see, slowly blinking, no connection. The receiver has to be rebound now. That's factory reset. All settings are on factory settings and receivers are not bound anymore. And therefore I can show you now how to bind those receivers in the different modes. And now to binding and one-way and two-way mode. The receiver and the radio come bound in two-way mode. What's the difference between two-way and one-way mode? In two-way mode, the radio communicates with the receiver and the receiver with the radio. So there's a kind of telemetry possible. And in one-way mode, the radio communicates only with the receiver, but not vice versa. So no telemetry is possible. And binding is quite different for a lot of the different receiver types. I have 3 here. There are receivers which have a bind button like this one, and the other one that came with the G7P, the larger radio, does have a bind button and a bind plug. And then there are receivers which do not have any bind button or use a bind plug. They go automatically in the binding mode. That is this one, the 4-channel one, and this one, the tiny 4-channel one. And binding is different in all of those, and it seems that it's not possible to bind the 4-channel really receiver in two-way mode permanently to the radio. First I will show how to do it in the receiver that comes with the radio. First, always switch on the radio in bind mode, press the bind button, fast blinking, then press the bind button of the receiver and switch it on. And it's in fast blinking, and now everything is fine. Works, motor works, switch it off, switch it on, stored, switch it off, switch radio off, on, stored, everything works. And now let's bind the tiny, what a mess here, the tiny 4-channel receiver. Therefore, again, I will switch the radio off, bind mode, fast blinking, and simply switch the receiver on, fast blinking, and bound. Come on, you're bound. Why does this servo not work now? Now it works. Old Savic servo. Okay, and then I simply switch off the receiver, switch it on again. Savic servo, that's by nature, they make noise, and it works. Switch it off, switch radio off, switch radio on, and it's bound in two-way mode. However, the 4-channel receiver, which is connected to this servo, does not do this. So I press the bind button, switch it on, radio in binding mode. Now I switch on this receiver, and it also goes in bind mode. And this takes some time, but it always binds. Sound, and now it's bound. Servo is working, motor is working. If I switch off the receiver, is this the right one? Yes. And switch it on again. It goes into bind mode and does not work anymore. If I bind it again, bind mode, fast blinking, takes some time. Come on. Now it's bound again. And if I switch off the radio only and switch it on again, this still works. So I can switch off the radio for several seconds. Slow blinking. Still works, but as soon as I switch off the receiver and switch it on again, it goes in bind mode and does not work. So this receiver does only work in one-way mode, which I will show you in a second. Switch it off again, switch it off again, and now let's check if the 7-channel receiver is still bound. So as in two-way mode, I switch on the radio, switch on the receiver, and no, it's not bound anymore. So in two-way mode, you cannot bind more than one receiver to one model place. I have to bind it again. So switch on the radio in bind mode, switch on the receiver, press bind button, fast blinking, bound, switch it off, switch it on, everything fine. Switch radio off, on. Even this works, even if you shouldn't do it. Switch radio and receiver off, radio on, receiver on. Everything fine, stored. And now let's go into one-way mode to show how it works with this receiver, and then you can bind more than one receiver to one model. So first I will set the radio to factory settings again. Now it's in factory settings, nothing should be bound. And to get into the one-way mode from the two-way mode, you have to turn the steering wheel clockwise, press the reverse button, come on, and switch it on. Blinking, and now it's in one-way mode. Nothing should be bound. Nothing is bound. Let's try the 7-channel receiver again. First, let's put the radio into bind mode, fast blinking. Press the bind button, fast blinking, and now there's a slow blinking, and in one-way mode there's a big difference now. It does not yet work. Check this out. And the receiver is slowly blinking. Then you have to switch off the radio and switch it on again, and now it's bound. Now this receiver is bound to model 1 in one-way mode of this radio. So if I switch it off and switch it on again, it works. So that's strange and different to binding in two-way mode, because you have to switch off and on the radio. And now let's try the same with the tiny 4-channel receiver. Let's switch on radio in bind mode, switch on, what's the correct, here. And you see, slowly blinking. I switch it off and on again, and now it's bound. And now if I switch it off again, if I find what's the correct one, I'll switch this one and on, it's still bound. And let's switch it off again. And now let's try the 4-channel receiver, which I could not bind permanently in two-way mode. So I switch on the radio, bind mode, fast blinking, switch it on, and it's already bound. Very short fast blinking. It's slowly blinking now. Switch it off, on, and now it's bound, and now it also stays bound. Switch it off, switch it on. Everything works fine. So those 4-channel ANT receivers from Flysky seem only to be able to be bound permanently in one-way mode. What's quite strange, because this 4-channel receiver is also be able to bind permanently in two-way mode. But check this out now. We have this servo, and now I switch on the tiny receiver again. And what's going on? We have two servos working in parallel, and if I switch on the third receiver, then we have 3 servos, 3 motors. So all those receivers are now bound to place 1, model 1 of the radio. This would not be possible in two-way mode. Let's switch them off again. And we will check the model memory in a bit. And before we check the model memory, the 5 models you can store in this radio, let's check stick calibration and failsafe. For getting into stick calibration mode, you have to turn the steering wheel to the maximum and push the throttle trigger full forward, so in full reverse, and then turn on the radio. Solid red and this sound, 2 beeps, and then you have to turn the steering wheel forward, reverse, full position, same throttle trigger, and then store it by pressing the bind button, and that way the radio sticks are calibrated. And fail safe, so to set the channels to that value that you want the channels or the servos or the motor will go. If there is a connection break between radio and receiver, that's easy. The receiver is bound and switched on again, and you simply have to press the bind button for 3 seconds. So I have, of course, motor throttle 0, and I also have now steering on 0. That's what I would like to have. And then there should be a sound, 1 sound, and this is failsafe. But to prove that this works, I would do this and check this servo now. I put this servo to full right position and press the bind button. And now this should be the position of the failsafe of the servo. So if I switch the radio off now, connection break, the servo should go to forward position. And it does. So failsafe settings work. And I press it again for 3 seconds, and now it should stay in center position if connection breaks. So failsafe is easy and works. And now to model memory. This radio does have a 5 model memory, so you can store 5 different models in the radio, and therefore you have to press the channel 7 and channel 6 button at the same time when turning on the radio. If I turn on the radio now, I'm on channel 1, not channel 1, model 1 of course. And you see this receiver is bound here and works on model 1. If I press the 2 buttons and switch it on, you heard 2 peeps. Now we are on model 2. 3 beeps, model 3. 4 beeps model 4, 5 beeps model 5, 1 beep. Now we are on model 1 again, and this does work. And now we check if it works in model 2 again or not again also. So now we are on model 2. This is stored, the last model, and now it does not work. So I'm in model 2 now. Now I go to bind mode, model 2, fast blinking, and switch on bind the tiny 4-channel receiver. This is bound now and works. Then I switch it off again, go to channel 3. Now we are on channel model 3, sorry. The 4-channel, the tiny receiver doesn't work, and the large one doesn't work either. So have to go to model 1 again, that this receiver will work, and model 2 again, that this receiver will work. But much more interesting, of course, we are now on model 3, but we are in two-way mode. And we know that this receiver doesn't really work in two-way mode, and therefore I will now change channel 3, model 3, to one-way mode. So therefore I have to press the reverse button, as we have seen, and to turn the steering wheel full clockwise. And now this channel 3 is in one-way mode, and I switch it off again and put it into bind mode, fast blinking, and now I switch on this receiver, fast blinking, slow blinking. We are in one-way mode, switch it off, switch it on again, and now this receiver is bound in one-way mode. And now let's test if this receiver also will work in the other channels now. So I go back to, this was model 4, model 5, model 1. Forgot to switch off this receiver. So this receiver does work on model 1, but what's with the, I have to find the correct one, with the 4-channel receiver? No, it does not work. And the tiny receiver does also not work. And now we go to model 2. So press again 2 beeps. And now I switch on the small receiver. It works. Does the 7-channel receiver work? No, on model 2. And does the 4-channel receiver, which is bound in one-way mode, work? No. So that's quite nice. It's quite complicated. You always have to cycle the models, but you even can switch between models with two-way mode and one-way mode, and the models are stored in model 1 to 5. At least this works, even if it's quite complicated to change the models, and always count the beeps, and always the model that you used last will be stored. So if you switch it off, switch it on, this is now, I guess it was model 4, none of the receivers should work, does not work, does not work, and does not work. So that's at least a nice function model memory for a radio with no display and interface. And now to trim, reverse and dual rate functions. If you use a normal receiver, not a 2-in-1 receiver with ESC function, you can adjust all those values, so channel reverse, trim and dual rate for channels 1 to 7. If you use a 2-in-1 receiver, then only for channels 1 to 4, but I do not have any 2-in-1 receiver here, so I will show you how this works to adjust all those values for channel 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's more difficult. So here I have bound the receiver normally, and here you have steering and throttle, plus and minus. And here you have the reverse button, and you check the servo, it's going counterclockwise now. To reverse, you have to turn the steering wheel to 100% plus or minus, and this is reverse. And it's the same for the throttle, so 100%, and this is throttle reverse. So that's easy for channel 1 and 2. But how to do for channel 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7? For channel 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 you have to press the bind button 2 times very fast to adjust it there. So then there will be a blink and show which channel is selected. So I press the, you see, 3 times, and channel 3 is going in that direction now. Now I turn the steering wheel again to 100%, and you see channel reverse in channel 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it's the same for channel 4, so it goes in that direction, and now it goes in the other direction. And of course for channel 5 and oops, 2 times fast, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we are on channel 6, that direction, turn steering wheel, reverse, change direction, turn steering wheel, reverse, change direction. And channel 7, you have to go to rear steering, I guess, rear steering only. Now we are on rear steering only, and now I was still on channel 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now it goes in that direction, 100%. Direction changed. So also works for channel 7. And trim is the same. You have trim here now for channel 1. I'm not sure if I am on channel 1 now. So if you switch it on, it's on channel 1, and you have steering trim plus and minus. And you see it works. And my channel 4 makes noise now with a different servo in the upper position. And you heard center position. Where's center? Yeah, this was center. And the same for throttle. I won't trim throttle now. And if you wanna trim channels 3 to 7, Again, same thing. Do I have rear wheel steering only? No. For channel 7. Now we are in rear wheel steering only. So I press the bind button 2 times. 1, 2, 3. And now the trim button is for channel 3, this servo. And I hope you can see it works. Center. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now it should work for this servo. And I hope you can see it. It works. Trim the center position. Okay, I switch it off and on again. And the last option is dual rate. Trim dual rate. Those buttons are for both. So dual rate is the end point of the servo or the motor of the channel, but both in the same direction. So you can only adjust left and right the same amount, not different. This is travel or endpoint adjustment. More advanced radios do have this. And how to adjust dual rate of channel 1? Therefore you simply have to turn the steering wheel to 100% and then you minus, and you see in both directions. Okay, and then again 2 fast clicks. 1, 2, channel 3. 1, 2, 3, channel 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You always have to cycle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Quite annoying. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we are on channel 7, 4-wheel steering, but I'm not in rear wheel. You have to go to rear wheel, at least the manual says. So I'm not sure if that's now still in the correct setting. Let's check. Yes, so check this. That way you also can adjust the dual rate for channel 7. So, channel reverse, trim and dual rate, that works quite nicely. I had really problems to understand the manual how to switch between channels, because I thought you could change the position of the switches to channels. So that was quite puzzling for me. Needed several times reading to understand how to switch between those channels, channel 1 to 7, at least in a normal receiver, not in a 2-in-1 receiver, and to adjust all the settings, reverse, trim and dual rate. But if you know how to do it, it's quite easy anyway. It takes some time and it's quite annoying to cycle all the time through all the channels. So I guess I explained all functions now. Super complicated of the new FS-MG7 radio coming with the FS-R7B 7-channel receiver light controller. Here with the USB-C port you can connect it to your computer and do firmware update of the radio and of the receivers, if there should be some one day. Maybe I will make a further video. And then there are several more functions if you use a 2-in-1 receiver ESC receiver combined, which seem to be quite nice. However, then you will lose the four-wheel steering mode. So my final thoughts. Yes, this radio is a bummer. I'm still not happy with it. So super complicated. I'm not sure how and why Flysky brings this model to the market that way. It has some positive points, of course. It's nice quality, nicely built. The steering wheel is nice with foam and adjustable angle. I didn't show, I'm happy how it is now. The four-wheel steering mode is super nice. Also winch control with channel 5 is super nice. And of course the 5 model memory for such a tiny radio without display. With no it is a computer radio. I don't know, do you call this computer radio or not? That's super nice. And also the 2-in-1 receiver ESC options seem to be nice if they are available. I didn't see them so far. Then there are some points which are positive or negative. For example, the size, it's super small. I like it. Really, I like those small radios as come with the FMS and CR18P trucks. Others will think that's nothing for them because they don't like those small radios. And also the light controller. It would be very nice to have a light controller on the receiver if it would be a good light controller. But this light controller is quite strange. This blinking light for nothing. If it would have a second normal light switch, super nice. And brake lights which are not lit up, weaker if you are not braking. That's quite strange. But there are also negative points, and I think many more negative points. First of all, you are absolutely lost if you only have the manual that's coming with the radio. You need to download manual from Flysky website. Super long and it's really complicated to understand. I struggled a bit to understand some parts, mainly with switching between channel 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to adjust all this stuff. If you know it, then it's okay. But programming is unbelievably complicated. It's really unbelievable. You will need the manual quite for a bit of time till you learned all the functions and how to program all the functions. That's quite a bummer. I never had a radio that complicated. Really unbelievable. And what I really dislike most, this super nice four-wheel steering function, which is really awesome. You will lose it if you cannot use it if you use a 4-channel receiver, and if you use a 6-channel receiver, and if you use those 2-in-1 receiver ESC units. So that's quite a bummer. I cannot understand why they didn't put it to a place from channel 1 to or channel 3 or 4. That's a bummer because it would be such a nice feature. And the same with a 4-channel receiver, you do not have any winch control because 3 position switch is channel 5. There is no option. That's really quite a bummer. And of course, you lose all this stuff if you use one of those 2-in-1 receiver ESC units. And the biggest negative, in my opinion, is the price. More than $50 for this radio. There are several radios out which are in a similar price range or much cheaper even, and can do the same or even a lot more. First of all, of course, there are those new small Dumbo RC radios. I already told you I bought 2 of those for the same price as I paid for the MG7 Flysky, but also the old larger Dumbo RC radios. You get them for $30 to $40. Okay, they do only have 6 channels, but a lot of functions. And those Dumbo RCs, you can control a winch with a 4-channel receiver, no problem. Super nice functions. The only advantage of this Flysky MG7 is the super nice 4-wheel steering mode and a 7th channel if you want, because the others do only have 6 channels. And if you want the model memory, however, I wouldn't think that anyone uses this radio for a lot of his models. Normally you use those tiny radios more for micro trucks and more indoor. Yeah, if you want model memory and four-wheel steering, but everything else and many more options in the new Dumbo Dumbo RC radio. But then this radio is more than 50 bucks, 55 or whatever. And I wonder whom Flysky wants to sell this to, because there is the Flysky FS-G7P. I showed you a detailed review video of this, and I paid 65 bucks or something, so only a little bit more than for this radio. Mostly you get it now for 80 to 90 on Chinese shops like Banggood, AliExpress, but even on local shops here, 90, 100. If you buy it as Apsima CR7P, it's also sold as Apsima here in Europe, in Central Europe. You pay 110, 120, but I paid 65 bucks for my FS-G7P. That's a completely grown-up radio with display and all whistles and bells. Unbelievable what it can do, what you can program. The only downside, it's ugly in my opinion, and it's super large, and controlling or programming with this joystick is a bit complicated. You have to get used to this, but it's not much more expensive. So who would buy this radio for 50 or 55 if he can get the FS-G7P for 65, 70 bucks? It's a completely different radio. And on the other side, down, much cheaper, there are the Flysky radios, the FS-G4P. Those are those radios which are sold as really Gen 4 here in Central Europe. Those are those radios which come with this nice 4-channel receiver, the FS-R4P. I did already show you in this video. And this is sold for 27 bucks here locally, but without promotion. There are always promotions, and if you combine, you get it for less than 25 bucks. Okay, it's only a 4-channel radio. However, you can control a winch because you have a 3-position switch, and half of the price of the FS-MG7 receivers, 15 bucks. And what I forgot with the price with the Dumbo RC radios, the tiny receivers for the ANT protocol in Flysky, the MG7. So those receivers, the FS-R4M, they are sold for 15 to 20 bucks, maybe 13 on some places, but normally here, if you buy it from the European Union, you have to pay VAT, and it's about 15 to 20 bucks. Okay, that's already much cheaper than the GMR with the AF-HDS3 protocol for my Flysky Noble, because those are 2 to 3 times more expensive. So that's already an awesome value, because those are that expensive, and I don't know in most cases what they are better. But the new Dumbo RC tiny receivers, the X4 FM receivers, they are again much cheaper. You get those with and without gyro function for less than 10 bucks. So that's again 10 bucks or 8 bucks if you use some codes, to 15, maybe even 20 bucks. Another thing that's not speaking for the MG7 ANT radio. So 55 bucks compared to maybe 15, 20 bucks more for the CR7P, which can do everything if you can live with its ugly design and the not super comfortable way of programming, but you get used to it. Or 2 of those Gen 4 radios with 2 4-channel receivers. If you are satisfied, you don't need more than 4 channels. You can use 1 for a winch control, 1 for 2-speed. So half of the price even locally. And then you should not forget there's a further quite new tiny 8-channel radio, the LDA-RC CT01. I made a detailed review about this radio, and that's cheaper, 5 to 10 bucks cheaper than the MG7. But that's a completely grown-up radio. It's tiny. It comes with an 8-channel receiver. Spare receiver is available for only 15 bucks, and it has a display, so you can program everything. Check my video. Of course, the display is super tiny, but it's less than 50. It's 45 bucks or something. 8 channels with display. Who will buy more for this radio with super complicated programming if you can get the 8-channel radio with display and super cheap receivers with all whistles and bells for less? So Flysky, I cannot understand really what you want with this radio, because there's a further thing. You can buy the spare radios for the FMS, FCX24 and Pesha for way cheaper than the MG7. So I did already buy one quite some time ago, but I have the version 1 with the toggles for drag brake and the receiver ESC unit with all the functions for light control, and I paid a little bit more than 40 bucks for this spare radio. Now there is the new version, the V2, which looks exactly the same as this radio, and it's sold with receiver ESC unit, and those ESCs are really good. So they have awesome low speed modulation. So you get it with receiver ESC unit and a light switch and a very good ESC for a tiny truck. And those are cheaper, way cheaper, 40 bucks, or if the new ones, I check the picture here, if they aren't even below 40 bucks, and you get a radio of the same form with a receiver ESC unit that works awesome. So why would you buy this? Flysky, I do not understand how you could bring this radio to us for this price. If this radio should be successful or should have success, in my opinion, it should be sold for maybe 35 bucks. But super complicated anyway, only for people who like this or who only want to use the basic functions. 35 to 40 bucks, okay, but more than 50 bucks, no way. So I do not recommend to buy this radio now. Of course not. Crazy complicated and not cheap at all. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope to see you in the next video. I'll be back.